Hi everybody, welcome back. So today we're going to talk about getting this National 183 back up and running. As you remember from our previous video, I did replace all the capacitors and all the resistors. Now it's time to align this receiver and tune it. So what I'm going to show you guys is how I aligned the IF transformers to make this receiver a lot more sensitive. Now, not only does it benefit the receiver by replacing the capacitors and the resistors and cleaning it up, you also have to realign or tune the IF capacitors or IF tuning coils. And the reason you want to do that obviously is to make this receiver a lot sensitive so it can receive signals or stations from further away. So that's why you want to align the IF transformer. So the first thing you want to do is obviously get your printout of the manual on how to align the IF transformers. So I have everything hooked up. So what I'm going to show you the tools you will be needing and the pre-setup you will be doing and other things as far as how to peak the IF transformers, find the frequency for the crystal that's inside. So we'll go over those quick instructions on how to do that. So the first things first, that's the tools you're going to be using. You usually have a aligning toolkit, non-conductive little tools. So you'll be using one of these, and you'll be using a screwdriver. The screwdriver is for those hard to move tuning inductors here. And you'll be needing one of these. This is my DC blocking device. All it is just a capacitor and a 12 picofarad capacitor rated at 5,000 volts. So you'll be using one of these, and that's just to protect your equipment. And you're going to be using a speaker. It's going to get loud and annoying in here, and you're going to need an analog voltmeter, ohm meter, and you're going to need a signal generator of some type. I'm using this one right here. It's a Fluke 6060. So I'll be using that. So after the receiver's been on for about 30 minutes, trust me, you will want to warm up the receiver because the crystal that's in here, so on these older receivers, the crystal fluctuates. On mine, it does a lot. Depending on the weather and the temperature, it tends to fluctuate a lot. So after I turned it on for about 15 minutes, let it warm up. I think it should be warmed up already. So this is where where you need to connect your signal generator. If you pay, hope you can see there. If you pay attention, let me zoom in. The manual wants you to plug into C3. So this is C3, this is the input on C3 for the capacitor, okay? So you want your hot lead on the C3 wire. Let me zoom in so you can see a lot better. Hold on. You see that wire right there? That one, that's what you want to plug your signal generator to, okay? And that C3 capacitor on this side, mind you, you have this is your band spread, but that wire goes to your C3 capacitor right there. So you want your hot lead there, and your negative to just any ground reference point. So let's talk about now how you want this set up. Let me zoom back out. Okay. This is what we need to do. This is your CW. You want that on. This is your pitch control. Tone control. You want that off or on, doesn't matter. This is your gain. You want it all the way up. This is your main tuning capacitor. Now then, the tuning capacitor, this is where you want the tuning capacitor to be. You wanted it to be open mesh, not full mesh. This is full mesh right there, where they both meet. You don't want that. What you want to do is you want to open it up. All the way open. Okay, you want it at that point right there. Now for your band spread, the manual is calling out for you to put it at 180. I'm not sure why, but I think that's 180 right there. And that's your band spread capacitor right there. So you can move it, you can see. So you want that at 180, right about there. And they want you to have your crystal selectivity to 5, phasing to 0, and this is the limiter off, and this is the gain. I'm going to talk to you about the gain. And a lot of these are national 183s. This gain can be a little tricky. The manual wants you to put it at all the way to 10. Don't do that. Bring it back to about 8 or 9. Because if you crank it all the way up, you will have oscillation. And if you get that oscillation on that receiver, it's going to throw away your readings. Okay? So gain, you want it all the way up. And this is the AF gain to number 8 or 9. Band spread, your band spread, your main band, you want that to E, and that's your broadcast band. Okay, so now you have it all set up. You're ready to go ahead and find the crystal frequency. So the first thing you want to do is figure out what crystal or what frequency is the crystal that's in here set to or resonant to. First thing we want to do is bring everything back up. Oh, let me show you how I have my speaker connected and stuff. So back here, all I have is my output to a speaker, and from the speaker to this voltmeter, plugged in back there, set that to AC volts, have it at 1.5 volt scale. That's it. Nothing much to it. Let me bring this back down. So I'm trying to get this all in one shot. Okay, so let's go ahead and set you down where you can see everything. Now the manual wants the signal generator to start at 453 kilocycles. So let's bring this back down to frequency 453. So now remember, we have the selectivity 5, 0. Everything's all set up. You have your blocking capacitor plugged in. Okay, now let's go ahead and generate a tone. Let's remove the... Sorry folks, it's going to get a little noisy. So what I'm doing here, all I'm doing is creating a tone that doesn't matter what tone, as long as you can tolerate the tone. You don't have to have a speaker. You can put an 8 ohm resistor across the terminal if you don't want to hear that tone. I like to hear the tone because I want to hear it. Okay, so everything's set up. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to adjust our frequency until we hear a pitch. Let me bring this to a tone where I can tolerate. Right there. Okay, you see where it peaks? So the frequency of that crystal is 456. So what are we going to do now is we're going to tune this receiver to that frequency. 456 is the frequency that's cut on this crystal that's inside here. So now all our tuning or our peaking will be based on that 456 frequency. And that's how you find your frequency, your crystal frequency is by figuring out the highest peak as you adjust the frequency. Once again, four, 5, 6 is where you get the peak. Now you want to start your amplitude really low, because I discovered years ago that you want to make sure you bring this as low as you can, because you overwhelm the receiver. See, I'm cranking the AF gain. Let me tell you, look what happens when I crank it too much. It goes into oscillation. So bring it down to around 8 or 9. So it won't go into oscillation, but you can crank up the amplitude on the generator. Okay, so I want to crank it where I can see a number that works for me, because we're going to start tweaking these inductors. So let's bring it down to around 5. Okay, so now everything is set up. So now the next thing you want to do is your crystal selectivity. Bring it down to 0. You see how it peaked up? Turn your CW off now. That's all you're doing. You turn your CW off. Your crystal phasing to 0 or to off. Now on the signal generator, let's put out a tone. Your 400 hertz tone. Now you hear that static that's coming in? That's what we want. We want to hear a lot of static. And once again, I apologize for that noise. I know it's annoying. Let me bring it down. The amplitude. We want to get as weak as we can barely hear it. Right there. Big difference. I don't want to crank up the AF gain too much, because once again you'll go into oscillation. Let's tell you what, I'll crank this up. Once you can leave it at 5. Now you have your 456, a tone generator at 400 hertz, amplitude as low as you can get it before it disappears. Now let's start tweaking. So let me get, not tweaking as in smoking, but tweaking as in figuring this thing out. Okay, so with one eye, you want to keep a lookout on the meter. You want to peak the meter as you start adjusting these inductors. Okay, let me bring you guys back. Hold on. Sorry for all the movement, guys. Hope I don't get anybody sick out there. Okay. All right. So let's start adjusting. Using my little handy dandy adjusting tool. Start with L20. Pay attention to the meter up there. Going the wrong way. That's how high as it goes. Next one, L21. As high as it goes. Now the manual wants you to start tweaking or peaking these coils, these inductors, from L20 down to L16. In other words, backwards. I'm not sure why I wanted to do that. L19 is very hard to move, so I'm going to use this screwdriver. This metal screwdriver doesn't seem to affect the sensitivity at all. On some receivers it does. Goes down. Okay. Back down again. Bring it back up. Perfect. Let's go to L18, which is this one down here. Okay, take this one now, L17. That's it. I recommend you do a second and a third sweep again until you get this peaked out. Before this video, I did a couple of test runs just to see where I was at and was really off. But I suggest that you do at least a second or a third time. Keep sweeping it, keep tweaking it until you get a peak. So bring it back up. And that's all there is to it. I mean, it's very basic, very simple. Just keep tweaking these. Go back again. And now, once you're satisfied with how much you can peak it, let's go back here and bring the amplitude down. And let's bring the gain up. Pay attention to the tone it's making. It's going to go into oscillation the more I crank it. And you don't want that because that's going to give you false readings. We just want to hear the tone of the signal generator. Okay. So let's go back again. You start from this side, doesn't matter. Next one, 17. I may be able to squeeze out just a tiny bit more gain. Let's go to L18 now. Oh, I brought that back up. So it's very important that you lower the amplitude. That. You hear the static coming in? That's what we want. So I was able to peak it as much as I can now. So remember, we started out figuring out the frequency of the crystal that's inside the receiver by connecting our probe into the inside the capacitor C3 Bringing this up to starting at 453 per the manual. Turning the crystal on. So that's crystal selectivity to 5. And remember, start at 453. We keep bringing it up until you hear a, give me some amplitude. Go back to the frequency. 456. That's how you figure out the frequency of the crystal that's in here. Okay, so the next thing you want to do, okay, so now to test this to see if you have it tuned correctly is the following. Let me take this off so I can show you. Now the crystal selectivity, remember, you want to start tweaking these in the off position, phasing 0. And the one way to figure out if you have this tuned correctly is pay attention to the meter. Let me give it some gain. Off. Level 1. You should see a bump. If you see a bump, when you crank it to 1, that means you're at the right track. You're at the right curve. The second one should go down. Down here again to number 3, 4, and 5. So the peaks are getting narrow and narrow and narrow the higher you go. So let me look at it one more time. And then off. Off would always give you a little bump back down. Okay, and that's all there is to it. There's nothing, there's no magic on how to peak these transformers and how to get the sensitivity of this receiver. So that's pretty much it. The next video I'll show you how to align the RF, peak the antenna coils, and go ahead and peak the oscillator for the receiver. So that's pretty much it. There's nothing to it. So if you're following along, give it a try. You can also use this type of signal generator. Just start slow at the 453 and just crank it until you see the peak. I usually, before I use my digital, I would use my analog with the frequency counter in conjunction to make sure I have the right frequency and it reads out. So that's pretty much it. That's how you align the IF tuning transformers on a National 183. Thank you for watching. If you have any comments, concerns, or something doesn't jive right, leave a comment. Thanks. Bye.
BC 내추럴의 혈액혈관 영양제 CSDP 골드는 혈당 관리와 당뇨 합병증 예방에 확실한 효과를 보이고 있는데요. 우선 혈당 관리입니다. 실제 임상에서 혈액혈관
Está el libro también con nuestro queridísimo padre José Román Flecha, Razón de la Esperanza.
小蚊就話啦，唔會，我都知佢哋好想睇嘅，唔緊要啦，咁我哋下次先睇啦。做人唔一定因為自己相識或者親友先去做嘅，有陣時就算係陌生人，出於一份心都係幫人嘅。喺日常生活之中，任何人都有可能。
Haz las fiestas un poco más fáciles.
其实并不少见。如果我们不寻求帮助，他们可能会导致更严重的健康问题。
那请您告诉我们有更多关于 Care Hope 提供的心理健康。
유난히 힘들었던 올 한 해 정말 수고 많으셨습니다.
$1 billion in precious metals. So what we're asking you to do is to call 855-815-GOLD, get a free gold.
Talking about Sweet James accident attorneys.
4 yards. So he got tackled, went down on his right elbow, his left leg.